Hi Josh. New day and new interesting thing to look at in the book of Ecclesiastes. We have already talked in detail about the word vanity, about the key term that's translation of the Hebrew word havel that is used almost 40 times in the book. Today we are going to look at a phrase that's frequently accompanying this term, and that's there to emphasize its meaning. This phrase is typically translated as striving after wind, just like here in the 14th verse of the first chapter of the book. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after wind. And this phrase, striving after wind, is what we are going to look at today. So let's switch to Hebrew and let's look at the later part of this verse together. Hakol havel reut ruach. So these two words, reut ruach, is what we are going to look at today. But let's first notice that this phrase is repeated 7 times in the book, and that in all cases except for one, it accompanies the key word havel. So we see havel here, 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 and so on. The only exception is the Ecclesiastes 4:6, where the term reut ruach stands on its own. So let's now examine both of these words in turn to see if there are any other nuances of the meaning that could help us understand this phrase. So the word reut is a Hebrew term that means longing or striving. It actually occurs only 7 times in the Bible, in the Old Testament, and all the occurrences are in the book of Ecclesiastes. And ESV translates them all as striving. So this doesn't tell us much. Let's look at the other word. So the term ruach is much more interesting, it's much more frequent, used almost 400 times in the Old Testament. And it has more nuances or more possible translations, with the most frequent being spirit and less frequent, the second most frequent actually, wind. And it's the term wind that's actually used by the translation that we have looked at to translate the word in Ecclesiastes. So let's now compare this verse in other translations to see if anyone opts for any different translation. So we have some 14 translations here on the list, and let's go through them. So striving after wind, pursuit of wind, chasing wind, grasping for the wind, chasing after wind, striving after wind, vexation of spirit. Interesting. So that's first case where the translation is really different. Vexation of spirit again, vexation of spirit again, chasing the wind, chasing after the wind, striving after wind, pursuit of wind, once more vexation of spirit, feeding on wind. Alright, so we see that number of translations, even though they are not among the most frequently used, opt to translate the word ruach as spirit, which forces them to seek a different nuance, different possible translation of the Hebrew term reut. So all of them actually go for vexation. So that's interesting. That's apparently there is a second valid possibility or option how to translate the term typically translated as striving after wind. I'm not saying that that's the better option, but it certainly is an option. So it's going to be useful. It's going to give us some more insight if we keep in our minds when we read striving after wind in the book of Ecclesiastes, to know that there is a possible other nuance of the meaning which could be translated as vexation of spirit. So I hope that was helpful.